my god, guys, did you hear? The world's finally started to heal.
Alright, bet.
Charlie Kirk got shot and he's...
Left-wingers, liberals, you need to be showing your opponents.
There has always been this idea that it is in fact the left that is the side of empathy, the one with compassion, the one where only they and only they alone believe in equality. But if you have been paying attention at least over the past decade or so, you'd realize this might actually not be true. In fact, it's actually the opposite. This monopoly the broader left across the West has convinced people of the notion that they alone are the guardians of tolerance and compassion is nothing more than a carefully built myth. And like most myths, once you scratch beneath the surface, the truth looks very different. History, psychology, and even today's headlines tell a much darker story. Let's rewind back a little. When the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia in 1917, their message was one of liberation, a society built for the workers and peasants, free from exploitation. But within months, their idea of compassion narrowed sharply. Felix Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the secret police, said it plainly. We stand for organized terror. Terror is an absolute necessity during times of revolution. Under Lenin's orders, mass executions of nobles, priests, kulaks, and dissidents became routine. This was the so-called Red Terror. Conservative estimates put the toll at 50,000 between 1918 and 1922, though many believe the number was higher. Stalin later expanded this cruelty with the Great Purge, killing nearly 700,000 Soviet citizens in just 2 years. The rhetoric was about compassion for the people, but dissenters and entire classes were stripped of humanity and eliminated. Jump forward to Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution in China. On the surface, it was framed as equality and justice, but Mao gave the Red Guards license to destroy anyone branded a reactionary. His slogan, "To rebel is justified," was permission for brutality. Teachers were beaten to death by students, intellectuals humiliated in public struggle sessions, and countless others accused of war crimes. Estimates of the death toll range from hundreds of thousands to over 1 million. The promise was a classless society. In reality, empathy applied only to one group, and it was open season on everyone else. And then there's the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. The left is often remembered as fighting Franco's fascists, but its record is far from spotless. Even before the war, leftist militias carried out targeted killings, including the assassination of conservative leader Jose Calvo Sotelo. Once conflict erupted, atrocities multiplied on both sides. In Republican-held areas, thousands of clergy, landowners, and conservatives were executed in what became known as the Red Terror. For all the talk of fighting for the working class, empathy did not extend to priests or political opponents. Many were simply lined up and shot. So why is it that movements and individuals who claim to be fighting for the downtrodden can so quickly lose any sense of compassion when it comes to their opponents? Now, before we get into the psychology and the studies that explain why empathy often turns selective, let me quickly thank today's sponsor. A couple of years ago, I got hit with multiple data breaches. Out of nowhere, I started getting sketchy calls, phishing texts, and even emails that had details only a company I trusted should have known. And that's when it really hit me. Once your info is leaked, it spreads fast. That's because of data brokers. These are shady companies that scoop up personal details, your phone number, email, even your address, and sell them to marketers, spammers, or even scammers. And with AI scams now cloning voices and sending hyper-targeted attacks, it's becoming even more dangerous. This is where today's sponsor, Incogni, comes in. Incogni does the legwork for you, contacting data brokers and demanding they delete your personal information. And because your data can pop back up, Incogni keeps sending removal requests on your behalf, making sure it actually stays gone. They've also launched a new unlimited plan with custom removals. So if you see your data pop up somewhere shady, you just send it to their team and they'll work to get that taken down. Getting started is simple. Just hit the link in the description, create your account, and let Incogni handle the rest. It's risk-free for 30 days, and if you use the code CYBERPUNKDINGO, you'll get an exclusive 60% off an annual plan. Take back control of your data with Incogni. Going back, modern research gives us some answers. First, there's parochial empathy. People feel far more empathy for their own group than for outsiders. A 2017 study by Emile Brunner showed that those with higher empathy for their in-group were less likely to help outsiders and sometimes even more comfortable with harm being done to them. The bigger the empathy gap, the easier it is to rationalize cruelty, just like the revolutionaries who wept for the people but sent nobles or clergy to their deaths. This perhaps could explain how quickly celebrations took place amongst teachers, nurses, and childcare workers, people who work in professions that require compassion and empathy after Charlie Kirk got shot. Second, empathy can fuel polarization. A 2020 study found that Americans high in empathic concern were more likely to display partisan bias. The empathy wasn't universal, it was funneled towards allies. The more they felt for their own side, the more hostile they became towards opponents seen as causing that suffering. The people who feel the most can also be the quickest to moralize and demonize. Third, consider moral expansiveness. Leftists often draw a wider moral circle, extending concern to foreigners, animals, or the planet. That sounds admirable, but in practice, it still excludes groups seen as threats, often the wealthy, the religious, Jews these days, or political rivals. Both leftists and conservatives simply prioritize different groups, and both are capable of exclusion. Then there's moral grandstanding. A 2019 study of thousands of Americans found those prone to it were also more narcissistic and more likely to get into moral conflicts. Big public shows of empathy often serve status more than compassion, collapsing at the outgroup boundary, fueling cancel culture and pile-ons. Finally, researchers have identified left-wing authoritarianism. For decades, authoritarianism was studied only on the right, but new scales show it exists on the left too. People scoring high on LWA are more dogmatic, more willing to censor, and even more likely to justify violence in defense of progressive values. Crucially, they don't see it as cruelty, they see it as moral necessity. Put together, the picture is clear. Empathy should be impartial, but in practice, it's usually partisan. We extend it to our own tribe and withdraw it from our own enemies. And when that selective empathy is tied to a sacred cause, it gives people moral permission for coercion. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, please remember to give it a like, subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon. If history shows the pattern, recent years in democracies make it impossible to ignore. Start with political violence. In 2017, a left-wing gunman opened fire at a congressional baseball practice, nearly killing Steve Scalise. The Virginia Attorney General called it an act of terrorism motivated by rage at Republicans. Fast forward to 2024, when Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt at a rally in Pennsylvania. And in 2025, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was gunned down while speaking at a campus event. Each time, many on the left rightly condemned the attacks, but the reaction often shifted quickly. Less mourning, more deflection to the other side is worse, and more recently, outright celebration. If empathy were truly their monopoly, there will be no hesitation in extending it even to opponents. Then look at speech and censorship. A free and tolerant movement would defend dialogue even when it's uncomfortable. Instead, campus data show nearly 2/3 of speaker disinvitations in the last 2 decades came from the left, aimed at silencing right-leaning voices. From Berkeley riots to shoutdowns of conservatives, the justification is framed as empathy, protecting vulnerable groups from harmful speech. But the method is coercion, not compassion. Even liberal speakers deemed insufficiently progressive have been cancelled. And there's crime policy. Bail reform and defund the police were sold as compassionate fixes. But when violent re-offences ticked upward and communities felt less safe, many progressive brushed off the victims' concerns. San Francisco voters recalled DA Chesa Boudin in 2022, and Minneapolis voters rejected abolishing their police department that same year. In the Australian state of Victoria, We've seen similar policies turn the state into a crime capital. Compassion, it turned out, was selectively applied. We saw this play out recently when Irina Zavrutska was murdered on a train by someone who had been bailed multiple times. Even there, the left largely downplayed the incident. Across history and into the present, the idea that the left owns empathy simply doesn't hold up. Time and again, movements that promised liberation and equality justified violence, coercion, or silence against those who stood outside their circle. Empathy that collapses the moment you hit the out group is in principle, it's branding. Yes, left-wing thought has given the world powerful ideals like human rights, solidarity with the poor, and anti-racism. There are even moments of restraint and reconciliation, such as Mandela's post-apartheid leadership. But these do not erase the counterexamples. True empathy is impartial. It means recognizing the humanity even of rivals, even of those you oppose. In healthy democracies, no side gets a free pass. Authoritarian impulses can emerge on the left just as on the right. The real question is simple. Do you uphold empathy when it's hardest? If not, it isn't empathy at all. Hey, you made it to the end. As always, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and give the video a thumbs up. It really helps. A massive thank you to all my channel members and Patreon supporters. You're the reason I can keep making content like this. If you want to support the channel, consider joining the crew. Just hit the join button below or head over to Patreon. Even a small pledge goes a long way, and I would genuinely love to have you on board. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.